The fourth approach then is strategic CSR in an age of management. And many of the examples that we give, we say that these are best practice companies, are taking this approach. When we talk about integrating CSR into the management systems of a company, that's a strategic approach to CSR. It's the kind of approach we get when Coca-Cola gets into trouble in India, in a district called Kerala, where they were accused of draining the water supply, and the community protested. And so they realized that water was their strategic CSR issue, together with health. And so many of their CSR programs now are focused on water, not only their own water management, but water in the communities in which they operate. That's a very wise thing to do, and it's very good for business in the medium to long term. This is also the approach that is obsessed with codes and standards. We've mentioned already Global Compact, ISO 14001, and many others. In fact, one of the books I did, which was an encyclopedia of CSR, we had more than 100 CSR codes and standards in that book. This is the idea that we can standardize CSR as a management system. So that only takes us so far. For me, these four approaches fail for three reasons. And when I say fail, I mean they don't solve the big problems we're trying to solve. The first is that they tend to be incremental, by which we mean slow, small steps of improvement. This is based, of course, on the quality cycle, total quality management, Kaizen philosophy, and so on, of continuous improvement. Okay, ISO 9000 and then ISO 14000 is typical of this. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Of course, if you're making small continuous improvement, that is a good thing. Typically, it means setting a policy, targets, objectives, programs, monitoring, auditing, reporting. These are all good things. But when you look at the scale of the problems and you look at the size of the efforts to tackle those problems, that's where the problem comes in. Because in theory, a company could be the most polluting company in the world. They could set themselves a target of reducing their pollution by 1% over the next 100 years, and they could get this certificate. Okay, it's voluntary, you set your own targets, and when you add all those together, we're not seeing the improvements at anything like the scale or the urgency that we need. The second failure is what I call a peripheral failure, by which I mean it sits on the side. It's not truly integrated into the business. And I use the tobacco companies as an example. These are some of their old adverts, which I love. Blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere. Does that still work, ladies? I've been meaning to try it. More doctors smoke Camel, right? And there are, of course, tobacco companies that claim to be socially responsible, and in fact, they win many CSR awards, especially for their reports. Does that mean that they really are socially responsible? This is an industry that kills more people than any other civilian industry outside of the military. So we really have to question, what does it mean to be socially responsible? Is it really changing the business that companies are in, or is it just something that is sitting on the side? It sits on the side in another way, which was mentioned in the first presentation, and that's that most small and medium-sized companies do not engage with social responsibility. So we always hear the same big company names over and over again, and they invest a lot of money in getting their CSR reports and their management systems right. But what about the tens and hundreds of millions of small and medium-sized organizations? What are they doing about CSR? If you add up their impact collectively, it's much bigger than the few multinationals that we like to focus on. The third failure then is that CSR tends to be uneconomic Now, this is not a popular thing to say in a CSR conference, because we all like to tell ourselves and our companies that CSR is good for business. The more socially responsible you are, the more money you will make. That's the message we like to hear and we feel we have to tell. Let's have a look first at some of the evidence. This is the Vice Fund in the United States. It only invests in so-called sin industries. These are industries like tobacco, gambling, alcohol, and military equipment. It completely outperforms the market. So the message is, if you want to make more money than anybody else, then invest in the least responsible industries. So this is taking the point to an extreme, but the message is that the market at the moment very consistently rewards companies that are not very responsible and doesn't consistently reward companies that are. At the moment, the price signals are all wrong. Why do we pay more for organic produce? Why do we pay more for fair trade? Why is renewable energy more expensive? There are so many distortions in the market that at the moment we're not promoting CSR as being an economically profitable thing to do. Of course, you can find those areas in which you can make business sense, eco-efficiency, reduce your waste, reduce your energy. But as a whole, the market is not operating to promote CSR.